Okay folks, welcome back. Alyssa here, and it's time to finally break out the shiny new notebook. This is my January plan with me, setting up my bullet journal for the month of January. It's gonna be pretty simple because I have some big goals and I don't really want to bog myself down too much with a lot of monthly spreads to fill in. I just want to focus on my game development work and get the year off to a good start. As you may know, if you watched my previous video where I set goals for 2021 and filled in all my yearly bullet journal spreads, I am doing a year of game development. Basically, this means that my one big focus for each month is going to be related to getting that game done. This might mean that my monthly spreads end up being a little bit boring as they are more focused, but I think it's going to help me stay on track to avoid extraneous journal spreads and focus on what matters. This notebook is called The Author, made by GLP Creations. It's the same journal I used for last year's monthly and daily pages. I like it because it's a nice size. It's about A5. I think it's a little bit thinner than an A5. And it has Ultimoe River paper, which is my favorite paper to use since I primarily write with fountain pens. It also takes watercolor fairly well, so I have a lot of options for decorating my journal pages. The very first page of my journal is going to have my January goals on it. I generally don't like cover pages because they aren't very practical and they take a lot of time to do. Every so often I'll do a really elaborate goal page where most of it is decorative, but in general I just like to get into the meat of my planning and decorate when I have time to decorate. Speaking of decorating, I wasn't really sure how to decorate these pages. I couldn't really think of a theme. I kept coming back to doing something inspired by a person on Instagram I know that I have mentioned before, Haley. I don't fully know how to say her handle, but I'll put it on screen. She has some older spreads with really bright, opaque rectangles. It looks like it's done with gouache because it's so solid and opaque and bright. But I tried busting out my gouache paints and they were not working out for me. I think my paints are a bit old, they were kind of goopy, and I never really got the hang of gouache in the first place, so I scrapped that idea and instead went for a method I used a long time ago, drawing kind of random doodles with a waterproof ink. I used microns for this, and then painting over it with a watercolor wash, just a bunch of different colors mixed together. So that's what I went with for January. There's not really a theme attached, it was just kind of fun. For my goal spread, I wanted to do something reminiscent of the Alistair method, where I have each task on its own row and a column for each week of January. I want to shade in the square on a week where I work on a task, so if I do anything towards that task, I'll shade in the square for that week. And then I'll fill in the square completely when the task is done. My first most important goal for January is to actually design the game I'm going to be building this year. I've broken this out into a few different tasks, such as doing a brainstorm on like the premise of the game, what the game is about, outlining what basic playthrough looks like, breaking major features down into tasks, and some other things that I'll list here. Ultimately, this is going to be me sitting down, thinking through ideas kind of methodically and documenting what I decide I want to build. Always keeping in mind that I want something I can realistically build in a year by myself, so I'm going to have to trim some things down and really focus on keeping it simple. While I'm working on the design, I want to start pulling code from old projects where I can, starting with the multiplayer stuff that I'm working on now, and also the player movement stuff that I mentioned in my yearly goals, so that's another thing I'm going to be putting down here. Assuming the design goes well, I also want to start drawing up a concept piece for the game. This is going to be something to show maybe the style of the characters or a quick sketch of the environment. The rest of my goals are all lifestyle things. First up, I want to get my run pace down to a 13-minute mile. Right now I'm sitting at about a 14 or 15 depending on basically how rested I am. I don't have a good measure on how quickly I can increase pace, but I have had 1 month where I chipped a whole minute off my runtime, so we'll see how this goes. I also want to read 2 books, and as a bonus task, I want to finish knitting a scarf I've been working on for a while just to finish that project up nice and simple and focused. On the right side of the spread, I have my habit tracker. I usually go pretty big in January with some lofty health and fitness goals. I wanted to go a little bit easier on myself this year, so while I still have several habits, I tried to pick ones that were more about maintenance than about drastically improving. So the habits I picked are, number 1, skincare. My skin really benefits from a proper routine, and I have been slacking for months. So really I just want to get started washing my face and applying various products as needed. Number 2, tracking food. I've been doing this kind of off and on, and if I can remind myself to track every day, it does help me make better choices. So I want to get back on that. Number 3, meditate 15 minutes. This is more on the improvement side of things because I have not been meditating at all, but by keeping the time nice and low, I think this one is going to be doable. Number 4 is exercise. Notice that I didn't put a time limit on this. I just want to make sure I'm exercising regularly. Whatever works for me as the month goes on. I'm just going to keep in mind the training goals that I've set. Number 5 is tidy up. Cleaning up a little bit every day helps keep things in order, and this habit is here to remind me to do it. Number 6, floss teeth. I'm pretty good about this at this point, but I find that if I stop tracking it, I stop doing it, so it stays on the list. And finally, number 7, a 10:30 bedtime, and that's a pretty soft bedtime. Basically, I just want to set an alarm, and at 10:30 every night, I want to stop what I'm doing and prepare to go to bed. I think this is a good baby step towards correcting my absolutely atrocious sleeping patterns. So there's a spread for my goals and for my habits, the 2 main things I'm going to be working on this month. And I think that's actually going to be all for my monthly spreads. There are a number of spreads I could do here, like a gratitude spread or an expense tracker, but I want to keep things simple. But since my monthly setup was so quick, I added in another bonus spread for this video, and I went ahead and decorated the next couple pages to put my dailies in. For these, I did the same doodling with the microns, but instead of doing a whole block, I just did doodles around the edges of these pages in some places. It's very haphazard, just kind of doodling where I felt like it, dropping in whatever colors felt right. If I was using fine liners for my dailies, I might have watercolored the whole page just for that extra pop. But because I like to use fountain pens, I want to make sure the spaces I'm writing in is not painted. Fountain pens tend to have issues writing on top of certain surfaces, and when writing on top of watercolor, most inks will feather pretty bad. I mentioned they also do it if you try to write on top of Tombow dual brush pens, which makes decorating with those a little bit trickier. But all I have to do is just leave some space to put my actual dailies in, and I'm good. So there it is, my monthly setup for January, plus a decorated daily. I don't usually decorate my dailies like this, so it'll be fun to see if I feel like doing it throughout the month or if I just have the one and go back to my very simple 2-column sort of setup. So that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. So the next video may be a vlog, or it may be the February plan with me a month from now. So whatever it is, I'll be back at some point with a new video, and I hope to see you there. Thanks again. Goodbye.